Hello, I'm just going to speak briefly about stress, resilience, and what's going on in Ukraine. So first, let's talk about what the brain is doing in a typical stable state. You have a lot of activity in the front of your brain in your executive network. Just a note that you need your whole brain to do anything, but there are networks, nodes, and hubs where more activity happens when you're doing certain things. So when you're kind of in a calm, alert state, you have a lot of activity in your prefrontal cortex. That's what PFC stands for. And it's regulating where you're putting your attention. You're able to kind of make decisions about that. But when you have an acute stress response, that changes. That activity leaves the frontal area of your brain and moves down to your amygdala, to your limbic system, those emotional response centers, where it's saying, uh-oh, do I have to do something to keep myself safe? Okay, so there's a physical change in where the activity is happening in our brain. So this means that when we have an acute stress response, we're not actually having a lot of access, the same amount of access to the frontal areas of our brain. Okay, that activity changes and our ability to access that area of the brain changes. Okay, so when you think about if you're having an acute stress response, maybe somebody corrects you and says you totally messed up or gives you scary news and you're like a little numb. Okay, what happens then? Can you think clearly in that moment to explain what's going on, right? Or to answer a question thoughtfully? A lot of times we give a knee-jerk response or we're reactive when we speak in those situations. It's not really the deep, thoughtful response that we'd like to give, okay? So that's just a physical change that happens in the brain. Executive functions, that ability to plan, think ahead, keep track of things in our mind, pay attention to what we want to pay attention to, those are impacted by stress. So stress impairs our working memory, our ability to keep track of what's going on right now. It impairs our cognitive inhibition, which means we're not censoring ourselves so much, right? When we respond, we're just like, it just comes out. We just blurt it out or we just do an action. We're not stopping to consider if it's an intelligent or skillful action. And it also impairs our cognitive flexibility. We'll get stuck on an idea and we can't really move away from it. We kind of think this is the only solution. So we have less cognitive flexibility. But it enhances our response inhibition, which means we're less likely to actually make a response when we have this kind of a response, this stress response. We're more likely to be kind of stuck or frozen, okay? We are more inhibited in our responses. Okay, and chronic stress can cause even greater decreases in executive function. So if this keeps happening over time, it can get harder and harder for our brain to kind of get out of this stress response. It also has long-term effects on the physical structure of our brain, chronic stress does. Now, I'm not trying to freak you out. There's ways that we can overcome and work with these things, but I'm trying to tell you what's actually going on. There is some atrophy in certain parts of our brain that are changing frequently during plasticity. They're always growing and being pruned, but there's a little more on the pruning or atrophy side in some areas, and then a little more growing in the amygdala, the emotional response areas. Okay, so we're strengthening the fight or flight response. It also causes some changes in the brain's memory area, right? So we're talking about the hippocampus now. And here's just some of what happens. But it's just, the point is to tell you that these changes happen, and we just need to acknowledge them. It's not a death sentence. It's nothing that's not reversible, but it does happen. One of the things that can help us work with this stress, either acute stress or chronic stress, is relationships, okay? They buffer our stress and make it easier for us to overcome. And you can think about this in your own life. Think about if you're having a really hard time, often reaching out to someone, connecting with someone can make a big difference to you and kind of alleviating that load. And multitasking, very bad for stress. Multitasking is a myth. You can't actually do 16 things at once, even though we parents are often trying to do 16 things at once, right? And especially with work and whatnot. So it actually makes you way more stressed out. So if you notice that you're just feeling really ramped up for no specific reason, it may be that you just have too many things you're trying to do at once. So get a pencil and a piece of paper, right? Write things down, get it out of your working memory. So you're not overloading those executive functions. Routines and predictability actually help to reduce stress. So if you start to do some things regularly throughout your day, you have kind of a set time or a general time when you wake up. You always, use the bathroom, brush your teeth, put on your clothes, whatever your order is. It can be really helpful and calming to the brain to have that predictability, to know what's coming next. Even when things seem chaotic, that routine can make the brain feel more safe and stable. Now, even if you are having to interrupt your routine a lot because the sirens are going off and you have to get to the shelter, you can still have a routine around that unexpected activity. So there's a routine of getting your bag that's packed and ready to go by the door, of going to the shelter, of getting into your spot, settling in, and then maybe you have a routine of reading a book together with your children, or it's a special game that you play, some particular activity that you do that they know is going to happen as soon as you get settled in. And then when you are ready to go, the same thing kind of happens in reverse. This is how you pack up and go, and then this is how you get back into your regular life. Specific things that you'll do so that the children and yourself know what's happening next, okay? And you want to add in some buffer time. So if you get this kind of acute stress thing that happens, or somebody with you is having it happen and they're about to jump in, you want to try and build in a pause if you can. This pause gives us a moment for our inhibitory control to kick back in. Because remember, we're shifting the activity of our brain from, the frontal areas down to the limbic areas. We want to shift it back. So pausing can help us to do that. And mindfulness, of course, can do it. Now, mindfulness you can do in the moment. You can also do a formal meditation practice. And if you want to see how you can do formal meditation practices with children, you can watch this video on YouTube of my son giving a meditation instruction when he was 7. He's very big now. He's 17. But you can see that it is possible. He's had a practice with me, a formal practice since he was 7. And he turns now, as a teenager, he turns to meditation when things get stressful for him. So I'd encourage you to build this in as much as you can, a formal practice. And informal practice can also be very helpful, where you're just reminding yourself to pay attention to how it feels in your hands when you wash your hands. So you stop thinking and you just put all your attention on the experience of what it is you're doing. You may remind yourself to do that every time you wash your hands, every time you walk upstairs, every time you brush your hair. Anything that you do kind of a few times throughout the day, it might be helpful to just intentionally make that a mindfulness moment. Also, inspiration is really great at helping us overcome stress and having a dream or a goal that we're working for. And there's great research by Mary Helen Imordino-Yang. Hi, Mary Helen! That you can look to if you'd like to learn more about the details of it. But it's astonishing. You really get access to more brain real estate when you're inspired or moved by something, okay? So if you want that better access, inspiration can be helpful. Get some exercise. There's tons and tons of research on how exercise improves the functioning of our brain and our whole body. You don't have to be like a massive athlete, but something. Get your body active as you're able to be. And poor sleep is a real drag for stress. It's going to make you way more stressed out, right? So sleep deprivation and sleep disorders are associated with maladaptive changes in the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal gland axis, right? So that's why you want to make sure you're really working on routines, so that routines make it easier for the body to know it's getting time to go to sleep. Of course, if you're in a disrupted situation, you don't have routines, you're going to do the best that you can to prioritize sleep when you can get it, okay? And I always ask this question to raise your hand if you know if you got enough sleep last night. Of course, I can't see you raising your hand, but do you get enough sleep in general? Just think about that. Do you? And do you know what enough sleep is? Right? Most of us don't. Okay. So enough sleep is when you wake up without an alarm and you feel rested. Right? Okay. When's the last time that happened to you? Right. You probably need more sleep. Probably. Okay. So things that can help with sleep. 5 hours is generally considered their minimum. Of course, there are exceptions to that. Some people can function well with less. Some people need a lot more. It depends on who you are, your own physiology. Everybody's unique. But you'll know, again, if you wake up and you feel rested without your alarm clock, that's how you'll know how much sleep you need. Things that can help are sleep hygiene, routines that help us relax before bedtime. Sometimes that could be music. Sometimes it could be meditation or some kind of mindfulness practice. Could be acupressure, where you just are giving yourself little like massage or pressure points before bed. cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's basically meaning routines. You're going to have routine patterns of thinking as well as routine patterns of behavior. And then some supplements actually might be useful. Some amino acids, some vitamin D, some melatonin can be helpful. So there's many ways that you can try to support better sleep if you're not having it right now. And actually, I didn't write it on the slide, but being active during the day, you say this about dogs, a tired dog is a good dog. Well, humans aren't that different. If we're physically getting enough exercise every day, it's easier for us to sleep at night. And you spending time outside in nature is naturally soothing to the body. Do it as much as you can if you're in a safe space to do so. So I just wanted to show you this so you can generally refer to this and see what are some risk factors that make it more likely that we're going to have trouble with stress, and then some protective factors that we can implement that might make us more resilient in the face of stress. Resilience is generally the capacity of a dynamic system, we're a dynamic system, to withstand or recover from significant challenges that threaten its stability, viability, or development. Okay, so that's resilience. Can we withstand and recover from big challenges? Okay. There are many pathways to resiliency, and there's some great research on this, a little older, but it's showing some different ways of how you can still skillfully recover, even if you start at a different spot. Even if you're resistant at the beginning, you may have a delayed response, you may be disturbed, but you're able to recover. So there's lots of different ways you may be responding with adaptive or positively adaptive or maladaptive responses. But there's still a way where you can get up to that resilience pathway from many of those beginnings. If you notice that you're in one of those beginnings, you want to start implementing your resiliency factors as best as you can. And some determinants of resilience, I love this, is communities are being more resilient when their members have individual resilience and when there's a sense of national resilience, which we know is huge in Ukraine. And I think internationally, there's just this tremendous feeling of support and promise for the Ukrainian people. Some specific factors related to resiliency are having a sense of agency or self-efficacy, meaning that you feel like if you make some effort, you could figure things out, you could somehow help the situation, including taking care of yourself. Also having dreams, aspirations, and goals, as we spoke about earlier, inspiration towards goals that you can work towards. Having support, again, those social relationships are key, but people who will back you up, who you feel like they are on my team, right? Even if I'm the worst player on the team that day, I'm still on a team and they're still going to back me up, okay? And then positivity, trying to maintain a light heart. There's a lot of ways that you can try and incorporate that into your life. Sometimes you just need to watch some really funny stuff or hang out with your funniest friend, right? Or get a book about jokes. Start telling jokes, okay? Anything you can do to help keep your heart a little bit lighter. That can be quite helpful. And I just want to leave you with this quote, one of my favorites from Dr. Montessori. Courage, my dear, courage. You are a new human. You must adapt to this new world. Go on triumphantly. I am here to help you. I wish you well, and I hope this is beneficial. Here are some references if you want to go deeper into any things that I presented in this. Good luck.